sorry. The world isn't one big liberal arts college campus.
I don't have an agenda. Like, I want people to do something. I need them to do something. I want them to avoid irrationality.
I guess what interests me is just like what interests everybody else. It's just sort of what feels real.
That was totally wicked!
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of Real News on this morning time. It's Wednesday. It is June 17th. I just looked over my phone and it confirmed both of those things to be true right now. My name is Mr. Henry. David Shan Thompson here with us as well. Going to introduce him fully here in just a second. RealNewsRadio.live. That's RealNewsRadio.live. By the way, just a quick, I don't even know why I felt the need to say this right now, but when we do the Real News Radio stuff, I think that's just sort of a title that carried over from our past radio days. And I think what we were doing then was distinctly different than what we're doing now. Back in the Real News Radio days, it was, i.e., a radio program that we're sort of branching out into a social media platform. But I don't know if necessarily the primary intention at that point was to build a family or a community. At that point, it was just sort of to set a stage. Right, it was just to set a stage of, you know, this area that we could have calm, cordial dialogue, and even try to approach a topic of something of disagreement. Right, RealNewsRadio.live is where we are now. But I don't know, man. I just want to, you know, the Real News social media portion here, the number 62. This is the 62nd show we've done since the COVID shutdown period. And at this point, it's about building the community. It's about building the family. It's about being able to grow and strengthen with one another. It's about to be able to figure some stuff out with one another. My name is Mr. Henry, though. Got an awesome show packed here for you today. A little bit of down stuff, a little bit of good stuff, a little bit of stuff that, hey, man, I kind of need some help with some of my libertarian buddies here. But David Shine Thompson, buddy, how you doing this morning, man?
I am excellent, sir. Good morning.
Morning, sir. Morning.
I'm doing all right, man. That Google story freaked me out last night about the Federalist and who was the other one? Gateway Pundit.
Zero Hedge.
Zero Hedge. That's right. Golly, sorry, Gateway Pundit. Didn't mean to put you in the same category. But
Might as well be. Why not, right?
Well, you know what's weird too is I could even tell I've been infected by this weird bias because I was like, I mean. Zero Hedge, that makes sense. But the Federalist, and I'm like, dang it, the propaganda's working. Why would I say that? Of course it's not okay. Like, it doesn't make any sense for it to be Zero Hedge. And it obviously doesn't make any sense to be Federalist. And it obviously is a big company trying to get rid of its competition. But anyway, the whole thing freaked me out. And anyway, I don't want to, bury the lead or anything, but that's where I'm at. I'm freaked out about Google being able to destroy competition for other businesses using their property. That scares me to death.
Well, listen, man, that is going to be the main topic of the show this morning is going to be what happened with Google. And just so we don't bear that lead, I mean, there's about a 2 or 3 minute Tucker Carlson piece I want to play eventually that gives a full breakdown. But just so people know, what ended up happening is an NBC executive or somebody that works for NBC basically reached out to Google and said, hey, there's this group over here in the UK that says that that Zero Hedge and the Federalist are kind of violating Google's terms of services because apparently they printed something about Black Lives Matter that was not wasn't copacetic, man. It wasn't in conjunction with the cause. It was talking bad about Black Lives Matter. Maybe they're an organization that's funded by people at the top and it just doesn't, it's not really accomplishing the intended goals. There's also another story out there, just so y'all know. There's apparently a massive fundraiser that happened over the last couple of days here. Apple and a whole bunch of other execs got together and wanted to do some fundraising for Black Lives Matter. Well, it turns out it didn't go to the actual Black Lives Matter, or maybe it did. Now there's this whole confusion as to who started the BLM movement and where the money's actually going and does it matter? And then if you look up, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The point being that Google took a look at what NBC said and said, yeah, I guess you're right. You know, turns out Zero Hedge and goodness gracious, man. Zero Hedge and the other one, Federalist, yeah, thank you, violated. Now, what they mean by violating is that, in particular, it was the comment section that they allowed to stay up. Zero Hedge was a slightly different situation, but it was the comment section on the Federalist that they allowed to stay up. So you and I, anybody else going on the Federalist website and commenting at the bottom of one of these stories, that apparently is what violated Google's services. Now, that's a very odd thing to be violative for the sole reason that Google actually has protections against what a comment is and is not. They have Section 702 protections that says you guys are shielded from that liability, but the Federalist is not shielded from that liability because the Federalist is a publisher. You guys are a platform. So it's a platform actually publishing what a publisher can publish. It's a very weird world we live in right now.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go a little further, Grant. It's not weird. The Cultural Revolution is being televised. If you ever wondered, like, man, I wonder, like, how they did it over there in Maoist China in the 40s and 50s and 60s. How did they take their entire culture and throw it into the sewer? How did that happen? Well, you're watching it. This is what's happening right now. It's madness. It's not like people making bad decisions. It's people silencing their competition, getting rid of dissenting voices, and not only that, like taking away their ability to make money. That is not okay. It's scary. It's scary that there are people getting rid of the ways people can make money when they have a dissenting voice. That is scary.
Sean, let's go ahead and dive into this thing, man. Like, I really don't want to. This is the story that Sean and I has been on the tip of our tongues ever since this thing broke yesterday, right after our show. We've been talking about it all morning before. Sean and I get on the horn together on this call about anywhere from half an hour to 45 minutes beforehand, sometimes just to sort of show prep and see what's going on for the day. Sean, if you could, buddy, under the national story section, skip past the meme review stuff, skip past the Trump executive order, see where it says regulate Google, big question mark. There's a Tucker Carlson story down there. It says Tucker, Google tries to censor content it disagrees with. Open that YouTube video. It should automatically open right to around 2 minutes, 46 seconds. I think this will do a good job of breaking down basically what's going on. And as Sean's pulling that up, the central sort of topic that's being discussed around this is that immunity that Google has because they are not considered a publisher. So if New York Times, for example, publishes something that they know to be untrue with malicious intent, it's defamatory. They can be held liable for that, right? And especially if it actually, let's say they publish something about me or Donald Trump, or Donald Trump's a bad example, but let's say they publish something about me, okay? And they know it to be untrue, and they publish it with malicious intent, intending to harm my reputation or my business or something like that. I can go sue New York Times. I cannot go sue Google. I cannot go sue Facebook. I cannot go sue YouTube because those latter that I just mentioned are considered platforms. As it implies, it's meant to be a neutral sort of arbiter. There is no truth telling here. It's just that the information is put out there, and a platform, as it would say, we do not restrict based solely upon one political ideology or bias over another. When you start doing that, you start to lose the immunity protection. So Google cannot be sued for printing something that's defamatory because they are not a publisher. You see? Now, a very interesting piece that I eventually want to get to in this is actually was posted on by the Real News family. Shout out to a guy named Robert McWilliams. The American Bar Association actually tackled this topic back in 2018. I have that linked in the show notes there. You can click on the Evernote link at the top of the description here. It goes to a really interesting article saying, like, is it time that we reformat what the First Amendment applies to? And I have a very interesting take on that. But Shine, play this clip here from Tucker Carlson from about 2 minutes, 46 seconds here. We'll play it through about minute 5. Go ahead.
This afternoon, NBC News decided to use some of Google's power to shut down a couple of its competitors. Power is useful for that. An NBC employee called Adele McComo-Fraser forwarded Google executives a screed from a left-wing activist group in England denouncing 2 sites, Zero Hedge and The Federalist, as, quote, racist. Google immediately took the bait, of course. The company threatened to ban both news organizations from Google's ad platform. In other words, to cut off their revenue. Adele McComo-Fraser was thrilled by this. She immediately fired off a victory tweet boasting about the censorship she had inspired. She called the 2 sites far-right. That's a term that has no meaning but does suggest some kind of immoral behavior that Adele McComo-Fraser disapproves of. At the end of her tweet, she thanked the activist who helped her to silence competing views, quote, for their hard work and collaboration, exclamation point, hashtag Black Lives Matter, with 3 raised fists at the end. Adele McComo-Fraser seemed very satisfied with herself. She had done her part for the revolution today. So what did Zero Hedge and The Federalist do to deserve this, to be demonetized? Well, we asked Google, and they told us that the two sites maintain unmoderated comments sections. In other words, readers get to say what they want. Google finds this intolerable. Faced with destruction, the Federalist had no choice but to submit to Google. The site deleted its comments section entirely. No more saying what you think about articles on the Federalist. Google has banned that now. Zero Hedge still does have comments, so it has been demonetized. We'll see if they can continue operating. All of this raises an interesting question, though. Google says it now holds conservative websites responsible for the comments of their readers. And yet, irony of ironies, thanks to a special carve-out Google has received from the United States Congress, something called Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, remember that, Google itself is not responsible for content on its platform because the Congress says it doesn't have to be. So if you're slandered by someone, for example, and that slander passes through Google servers, you cannot sue Google over it. Google is immune from the consequences. Immunity is a very nice thing to have if you're a big company. Fox News doesn't have it. But again, thanks to Congress, Google does have immunity. And that's one of the main reasons that Google's founders are some of the richest and most powerful people in the world, because Congress allowed them to be. Senator Josh Hawley pointed this out today. Let's hope he and his colleagues act soon.
You can stop it there, buddy. That's actually one of the clips we played from Josh Hawley a little while ago. And I want to pause here so everyone's up to date with where the story is. Okay, this is not a new story, by the way. This has been a very slow rollout for Google for, I mean, arguably since they existed as a company, but certainly over the last 5 to 10 years, for sure. Now, this next little rant I'm going to go on here in just a second, I have to give full absolute credit to my boy David Sean Thompson for at least sort of generating this theory in my mind to think about it in a slightly different aspect. And I might be wrong here, but I don't necessarily think that the left is all that worried about winning elections anymore. Stay with me. I think they shifted that strategy a long time ago. It used to be the leftist strategy or Democrat strategy, doesn't matter how you think about that. The strategy used to be, let's circumvent the legislature. We don't need to worry so much about elections if we can just get to the Supreme Court. We'll just cram every single piece of societal change that we want to down the Supreme Court. And we'll tag a little bit of the 14th. We'll tag a little bit of the 9th. We'll tag a little bit of the penumbras of whatever we want to do. We'll just make it up kind of as we go along. The only real important part of election, though, is to make sure that we get our people in as judges and justices. That was a slight concern about elections. But if you fast forward to where we are right now, I don't necessarily think they're concerned about elections at all, possibly the Supreme Court included. We saw some of this yesterday. We saw a win, what looked like a progressive win yesterday, and we saw what looked like a very massive progressive loss, a progressive win with the LGBTQ decision and massive progressive loss with the qualified immunity decision. I think they're understanding it's too volatile. It's not sustainable. It's such a lack of control. God forbid that Trump is actually the first president in U.S. history to replace 5 Supreme Court justices. We will lose that sense of control for possibly another 3 or 4 decades. Rightfully so. Elections have consequences, right? You play that game, you have to lose the proper way. And I think they're starting to wake up to that. Well, they did a while back. Here's what I'm saying. I don't think they're worried about elections at all anymore. Think about it this way. When it comes to the First Amendment, if you can get someone to self-censor, if you can get even a portion of the populace, or God forbid the entirety of all the populace, to impose speech restrictions and enact repercussions on themselves that are far greater than anything the government would ever think of doing, why do you even need to worry about the First Amendment? If you can change how the values and principles surrounding the First Amendment are perceived by the party that once relied upon it so heavily, the party that once relied upon those very principles so heavily, why do you even need to worry about elected officials? If you can get the people themselves to weaponize disagreement, why would you ever need the government to do it for you? The mob is Rome, right? Think about what's happening with Google right now, bro. People are losing their jobs. They are risking everything to make a simple statement of disagreement. There's an entire section of the show notes today dedicated to cancel culture being alive and well. And I don't even know what to phrase it as properly because it's not even cancel culture anymore. It's something far past that. There's an article coming out of the UK right now. It's called In Defense of Colorblindness. And I'm pretty sure if something like this were to be published in the United States, whoever published this, or God forbid, whatever author was out there that was bold enough to put their name on it, that person would never have a job. arguing for some kind of colorblindness, arguing for some kind of unity. Here's the first couple paragraphs. Woke identitarianism. Interesting new term. Woke identitarianism is an ideology that has accelerated over the past 10 years. It is strongly influenced by critical race theory. Standpoint epistemology, and intersectionality. The thread that underpins all of these ideas is the notion that every aspect, every facet, and every detail of our lives, history, and culture are explicitly or implicitly complicit in racism. According to this view, there are hierarchies of victimhood in which the more claims to real or perceived victimhood status you have, the more authentic and morally superior you are. The worldview rejects dialogue between different groups because different people can never truly understand each other's experiences. Are y'all hearing that? Let me read that part one more time. This worldview rejects dialogue between different groups because different people can never truly understand each other's experiences. As James Lindsay, co-founder of New Discourses, has pointed out, many woke identitarians even argue that science, reason, and evidence are a white way of knowing. Not right way, white way of knowing. He rightly concludes that this hurts everybody, but especially Black people. It renders dialogue pointless. It denies that Black people can be individuals with agency. Man, that is the truth. It denies that Black people can be individuals with agency. It denies that we can make any progress towards equality. So I go to the question one more time before I get onto the analysis of whether there's a legal way to do this or not, or I'm just asking the question of should. If you can get a company to force its populace to self-censor, do you need a government to do it for you? If you can get a company to redefine what the values, the underlying precepts of the First Amendment means, do you need to worry about elections anymore? Do you need to even worry about the Supreme Court to define or reshape or rescope what the First Amendment means in 2020 going forward? If the people aren't going to listen to you anyways. We've already lost faith in all of those institutions, have we not? Nobody trusts the Supreme Court anymore. Nobody trusts the legislature anymore because we stopped using the legislature for anything and everything because we're using the Supreme Court for everything. And now that we're using the Supreme Court for everything, they've jumped past the role of what they were defined to do, and it's just pure judicial activism. So nobody trusts that anymore. And now, because the legislature's not doing anything at all, the executive branch is usurping all that power as well. And it's either executive order or the Supreme Court. We've knocked the legislature out together. And because we've done so, there's no checks and balances. And because there's no checks and balances, we don't trust anything in this system anymore at all. So the only thing we have left to trust is whatever the priest class at Google tells us. The argument that some legal authorities are making right now is because that's the situation we're in, maybe we also need to redefine the way the law looks at it. Now, personally, I don't know if I'm there or not, but I want to kick it to Shine. I want to kick it to some people in the Facebook comment section here as I've been rambling a little bit, y'all. This is partly the reason why I think people are so concerned with what happened to Google yesterday, because it's bigger than just a Zero Hedge getting banned. It's bigger than just the Federalist. It's bigger than just conservative censorship right now. You realize nobody wins this game, right? Nobody. Nobody wins this game. Let me tell you a quick story that I'm pretty sure is going to get us banned. 1961, Dr. Martin Luther King. He was writing for the Montgomery Times. I'm pretty sure this story is going to get us banned. I should have linked in the show notes. I'll link it for tomorrow's show. A homosexual male wrote to Martin Luther King in 1961, asking him, hey, I'm a boy. At church, I find myself attracted to other boys. What should I do about the situation? It was a question and answer type thing. Right into Dr. King. He'll tell you what's going on. He'll tell you that the proper spiritual way to view things. This little boy writes in saying, hey, I'm struggling. I don't know what I should do. I don't know what I do with these feelings of being attracted to the boys. Dr. King responds as eloquently as he could, as I suppose as softly as he could as well, in the exact way a Southern Baptist pastor in the 1960s would, telling him it was wrong, he should seek counseling, he should forgive himself, he should move past it, he should do everything he can to get past this point in his life. It's a sin. My question is, at what point then does Martin Luther King become a victim to what's going on right now? Is Martin Luther King's alleged homophobia going to be a problem? Do you get what I'm saying? This system, there is no forgiveness in this system. Nobody can attain the level of perfection that this system alleges that they would like to accomplish. Nobody, dude. Humanity is fallible at our core. Every single one of us falls every single day. That's kind of the beauty in humanity, though. It's not even in spite of our failures. It's because of our failures that we